VENTI, who was once upon a time one of the best characters in Genshin Impact, has unfortunately fallen off and become practically useless nowadays. At least that's the belief of a lot of people. But is that really true? I mean, really? The truth is, and this brutal truth might shock you, that is, well, VENTI is actually still good. But how? Should you pull for him on his second upcoming rerun? Let's talk about those factors. By the way, I'm actually a pretty big fan of VENTI. Just look at my portfolio pictures. So I'll admit that this video might be slightly biased, but you know what I'm a bigger fan of? Gundams. My favorite is actually the 00 Gundam, not this one, but this one that I can take on the go with Gundam Breaker Mobiles. Today's video is sponsored by Gundam Breaker Mobile, where you can battle with your Gundams. And you can actually build and customize your own Gundam as well, with original story and a AR mode that lets you take picture with your Gundam. They just recently hit 6 million download and are giving away tons of free subs, including over 1,000 free capsules. But to add on top of that, they're also giving us thank you login bonus, 6-time multiplier in the growth hangar, premium ticket fragment in the supply container, as well as a new player login bonuses. This is the most amount of stuff that they have given away before, and using all of these bonuses, you can easily build your own Gundam and dive into the battlefield, just like what you're seeing on the screen. Hiya, pyong! Anyway, check out and download Gundam Breaker Mobile using the link in the description below, and thank you again for sponsoring this video. When VENTI was first released, he was really famous or infamous for his infinite sucking black hole that was trivializing every single content that he came across, whether that be the overworld, domain, or even the abyss. Owning VENTI mean that you could practically just beat every single content that you walk into with ease, and that is not actually an exaggeration for people who might be new to the game. Back in the days, VENTI impact was actually very real. If you ever talk to any of the old players, just ask them how was 11-2, which was the biggest flashback of VENTI impact. But regardless, what made VENTI so good was his infinite black hole that was completely suck everything in, making every single enemy impossible to escape. However, many of the recent abyss start to introduce heavy enemy or even straight up boss type enemy that VENTI cannot suck in at all, which means that he definitely lost some of his original purpose, the infinite black hole, and because of that, many players thought he was no longer good. So, why is he so good? It is definitely true that VENTI hasn't been that great in the past couple patches, but a lot of people tend to forget that, well, VENTI is still a unammo unit at the end of the day, which means that he's legally not allowed to be bad because of the existence of the VV4 set artifact, which is one of the best and the most OP artifact in the game, increasing your elemental damage by a lot. But VENTI actually have a secret functionality beyond just sucking as well as reducing enemy resistance. He actually have a 15 energy refund. You heard that right. A 15 energy refund to your other party member who have the same element as the infusion of his elemental burst. A lot of people like to value Raiden elemental burst energy refund a lot, and as it turned out, VENTI's elemental burst also refund you energy, and it's actually not quite far behind compared to Raiden. Nowadays, VENTI is actually still actively being played in freeze type of team because crowd characters really appreciate their elemental burst. These are characters like Ganyu, Aka, or even Shenhe. These characters are largely dependent on their elemental burst, so the 15 energy refund from VENTI is actually greatly appreciated. So VENTI is still quite okay and usable in their freeze team. But what about outside freeze team? Is he just completely useless just like everyone else say? Well, probably at the current moment, but that's at the current moment. The thing is, as soon as we get suckable enemy in the abyss again, VENTI will just come in and destroy the entire content and trivialize it. And the reason why VENTI is so good is because no other character can ever mimic that. So the current position for VENTI is kind of like a really valuable tech-in option for whenever there is a abyss with suckable enemy, and for the rest of the time he's kind of like a anemo support in free team with either Ganyu or Ayaka. And you might be thinking, well, all the past couple abyss has been only heavy and boss type enemy. How do you know that miHoYo is gonna put suckable enemy in the future abysses? Sasuke? Well, that is true. I cannot guarantee that future abyss will have suckable enemy that VENTI can work with, but at the same time, I also cannot guarantee that the Future's Abyss will only contain heavy and boss type enemy. And by Future Abysses, I mean every single Future's Abyss until the end of Genshin Impact. At one point, as long as miHoYo decide to put suckable enemy into the Abyss, VENTI will be a really valuable tech-in option. And because of that, VENTI still remain valued. As we approach Sumeru, we can expect a lot of new enemy being added to the game as well. And who knows if they will be suckable or not. Maybe they will all be suckable and VENTI will once again be very really useful. A lot of people often like to compare Kazuha and Venti together and ask which one is better, but the real question to ask here is that, do you really need Kazuha? While Kazuha is a really good character that can work pretty much every single where and therefore have really high value, the truth is, and this is gonna be a hard truth, Sucrose is actually just as good as Kazuha for many of the cases. If you want to play International, which of course is one of the best teams in the game, you might want a Kazuha for it, but you quickly realize that putting in Sucrose here actually does just as well. So in that sense, Kazuha is not needed. But for what Venti does, he is completely irreplaceable. There's not a single other character in the game that can replace what Venti does. And if you want a Venti, there is no replacement, potentially with your Ganyu or with your Ayaka. So if your two teams setup look like this, where you run a Ayaka or Ganyu on the second half and you want a Venti, and in the first half you just run something like an International that can use a Sucrose, Venti could actually be more valuable for your account than Kazuha, just because you don't need Kazuha, but again, there's no replacement for Venti. Although you could use the Kazuha here as well, so Kazuha is still fine. So the ultimate question is, should you roll for Venti or not? Well, I definitely won't deny that Venti's value has went down ever since they started introducing heavy enemy or boss enemy in the Abyss, but back then he used to be a must-roll. Honestly, it is better overall for the game if he's not a must-roll. Personally, I would say you should definitely roll for Venti if you have Spare Primo, as he's still a really valuable pickup as a tech-in option for whenever the Abyss have small suckable enemy. The important part here is if you have Spare Primo. If you have something else that you think is more important, then I'll definitely go for those first. For example, if you're missing a crowd characters like you don't have Ganyu or Ayaka, then I'll definitely value the Ayaka that is coming in the second half of the patch much higher than Venti, and so I would definitely go for Ayaka instead of Venti if that was you. On top of that, to be honest, for a lot of the new player, especially player who are not particularly chasing the meta, I would actually recommend Kazuha over Venti at the current moment, because Kazuha is just probably more fun for the new player, more valuable overall, because Kazuha can be used everywhere and they will probably appreciate a character that they can always run rather than a really strong character that only kind of works sometimes. Overall, I will actually put Venti's value rating at a 4 out of 5. However, with a huge disclaimer that only if you have Spare Primo. I was actually considering a 3.5, however, because Venti is still quite decent as a Anemo character with a 15 energy refund, but with a potentially really huge upside of just being able to destroy every single content and trivialize it, I end up putting him at a 4, although I did consider putting him at a 3.5 at the current moment instead. But with that being said, just know that it is a huge disclaimer here, and so just be aware of it. And again, if you have Spare Primo, I would heavily encourage you to pick up Venti, as he will probably be useful sometimes in the futures whenever MiHoYo decides to stop trolling in the Genshin Abyss. I know a lot of this might be quite complicated to think about, so because of that, I want to give a shout out to zajef77, who recently did a Venti Q&A about why he is so valuable. He answered a lot of the frequently asked questions in detail about Venti, so definitely check that out. There might or might not be a link in the description below depending on when this or his video get uploaded. If this video got uploaded before his, then there might not be a link below, but there will be a link to his channel, so don't forget to subscribe to him. But you know what's more important? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well, as we're trying to push for 100k subscribers. So with that being said, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.